You remember the haunting cases from BuzzFeed Unsolved, the ones that left you staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m.? The boy who vanished from his bedroom. The young woman whose body was found in a water tank. The family who disappeared into thin air on Christmas Day. For years, the internet obsessed over them. Reddit theories. YouTube deep dives. Paranormal guesses. But now, the unthinkable has happened, asterisk. Some of those cases have actually been solved. And the truth? It's darker, and stranger, than anyone imagined. These are the most chilling BuzzFeed Unsolved Mysteries that now have answers. Welcome to Shadow Files. Before we dive into the case, please like this video and subscribe to this channel if this is your first time. Thank you. Let's begin. Case 1, The Watcher House. June 2014. Derek and Maria Broaddus thought they'd found the perfect place to raise their 3 kids, a beautiful 6-bedroom colonial on Boulevard in the quiet, upscale suburb of Westfield, New Jersey. It was the kind of neighborhood where people left their doors unlocked, kids rode their bikes until dusk, and everyone knew everyone. Or so they thought. Just days after closing the deal, before the family had even moved in, an envelope arrived in their mailbox. No return address. Thick, old-fashioned paper. Inside, a letter. It began with, "Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard." And it ended with a chilling signature. The Watcher. The letter claimed the house had been watched for decades, through multiple generations. The writer said they had been put in charge of watching 657 Boulevard, and that it was now their time to do so. They described the Broaddus children, by their physical appearances and birth order. They mentioned renovations the family had begun. And they asked haunting questions. Have they found what's in the walls yet? Imagine this, you haven't even unpacked a single box, and someone out there already knows your kids' names, ages, and what rooms they sleep in. The Broadduses went to the police immediately. An investigation began, but every neighbor was a potential suspect. Some residents thought it was an elaborate prank. Others suspected a former tenant, or even the previous owners. BuzzFeed Unsolved covered the story in 2018, fueling speculation online. Was the Watcher a jealous neighbor who resented outsiders? A dangerous stalker with a vendetta? Or something far stranger, a person who believed they were supernaturally bound to protect the house? The case only got more unsettling. 2 more letters arrived in the following months, each more aggressive, more threatening. The writer hinted that they could call the children by name, and even lure them into the house. Police tried DNA testing on the envelopes, but the results only narrowed it down to a possible female suspect, and still, no one was charged. In desperation, the Broadduses hired private investigators and former FBI agents. They even considered selling the house at a loss just to get away. Then came a hidden detail the public wouldn't learn until years later. In 2022, court documents revealed that the family who sold the house to the Broadduses had also received Watcher letters. They just never disclosed it to the buyers. Legally, they weren't required to in New Jersey at the time, but morally? That's a different question. Around that same time, a local investigative journalist followed a trail of odd neighborhood incidents, unusual comings and goings, property disputes, and reports of someone using an antique typewriter. The journalist traced this pattern back to a neighbor with a long-standing grudge over the Broadduses' renovations, believing they were ruining the character of the street. While there was never enough hard evidence to press charges, something curious happened. The letters stopped. The Broadduses eventually sold the house. And the Watcher disappeared from Westfield. Whether it was a malicious prank that went too far, a local's twisted obsession, or a ritual that ended, no one can say for certain. But one thing is clear. Sometimes, the most beautiful streets hide the darkest secrets. Case 2, The Mysterious Death of Elisa Lam. It began as one of the strangest mysteries of the internet age, and for many, it still is. January 31, 2013. A 21-year-old Canadian student named Elisa Lam was on a solo trip through California. Her final stop, Los Angeles. Her choice of accommodation would become infamous, the Cecil Hotel. The Cecil wasn't just any hotel. Built in the 1920s, it was once grand, but by 2013, it had a notorious reputation. Over the decades, it had been home to countless crimes, overdoses, and at least 2 known serial killers. Locals called it cursed. Elisa checked in, posted her travel updates online, and then vanished. For days, police searched the city. Her family and friends launched appeals. Then, 2 weeks later, they released something that would freeze the internet in its tracks. A 4-minute security video from one of the hotel's elevators. The footage showed Elisa stepping inside, pressing multiple buttons, and then, oddly, hiding in the corner, peeking out as if someone was following her. She moved her hands in strange, fluid gestures. She stepped in and out of the elevator. The doors stayed open longer than they should have. And then, she walked away, disappearing down the hall. The video went viral instantly. Millions watched. Millions speculated. Some swore she was being chased. Others claimed she was possessed. Paranormal forums linked her death to ghost sightings at the Cecil. Conspiracy theorists tied it to a tuberculosis outbreak in the area, even pointing out that the medical test was called the Lam-Elisa test. 2 weeks later, a hotel maintenance worker discovered her body in one of the rooftop water tanks after guests complained of low water pressure and a strange taste in the tap water. The question that haunted everyone. How did she get there? BuzzFeed Unsolved revisited the case in 2016, fueling the mystery all over again. But behind the scenes, investigators were piecing together a far less sensational, and far more tragic, truth. Elisa Lam had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and depression. In the weeks before her death, she had stopped taking some of her prescribed medications. Friends described episodes where her thoughts raced, her behavior became erratic, and her paranoia spiked. What the public never saw was additional security footage from outside the elevator, showing Elisa climbing a maintenance ladder to the roof, unnoticed. The roof access was supposed to be locked, but it wasn't. The hatch to the water tank was also unsecured. According to the coroner's report, there were no signs of physical trauma or assault. The cause of death, accidental drowning, with her mental health condition as a contributing factor. Still, the mystery never truly went away. Some point to odd gaps in the elevator footage, frames that seem missing. Others note that no staff member could fully explain why the roof door alarm didn't go off. Case 3, The Missing Sodder Children. It was Christmas Eve, 1945, in the small town of Fayetteville, West Virginia. The Sodder family, George, Jenny, and their 10 children, had finished opening gifts, hung their stockings, and were preparing for bed. Snow was falling outside. The war had just ended. It should have been a peaceful night. But just after 1 a.m., Jenny Sodder awoke to the smell of smoke. Flames were already consuming the walls of their wooden home. In a panic, she and George rushed to wake the children. 4 of them escaped with their parents into the freezing night. But 5 of the Sodder children, aged between 5 and 14, were trapped upstairs. George tried everything to reach them. He ran to grab the ladder from the side of the house, but it wasn't there. He tried to start his trucks to drive them close to the windows, both engines mysteriously refused to start. Within 45 minutes, the entire house collapsed into a smoldering pile. The next morning, there was no trace of the missing children. Not even bones. And that's when the questions began. The local fire chief suggested the blaze was caused by faulty wiring, but George found the power lines intact. Jenny remembered hearing what she thought was a ball hitting the roof shortly before the fire started, and later wondered if it had been a small incendiary device. Stranger still, the family's phone line had been cut. Days earlier, a traveling salesman had come to the Sodder home, warning George that his house would burn down if he continued to criticize Mussolini, a sensitive topic for an Italian immigrant family in a post-war America still simmering with political tension. Rumors spread fast. Some locals whispered that the Sodders had crossed the wrong people, possibly the Italian mafia. Others claimed the children had been kidnapped to silence George. BuzzFeed Unsolved explored the case in 2017, highlighting these chilling possibilities. But in the decades that followed, the mystery took on a life of its own. There were alleged sightings of the children, in a tourist photo, at a convent, even as adults in another state. In 1967, the Sodders received an anonymous letter from Kentucky, containing a photograph of a young man who bore a striking resemblance to their son Louis. The message on the back read, "I love brother Frankie. Illo boys. A 90132 or 35. The family believed it was a coded message. But here's what most people didn't know until much later. In the early 2000s, a forensic fire investigator quietly re-examined the original reports and surviving evidence. His conclusion? In a house built almost entirely of wood, burning at extremely high temperatures for nearly an hour, it was entirely possible for human remains, especially small bones, to be completely destroyed. As for the suspicious phone call the Sodders received just before the fire, later interviews revealed it had come from a bar in town. A simple misdial. And the missing ladder? Investigators learned it had been moved for repairs and was found in a nearby ditch, likely forgotten in the chaos of the night. None of these findings erased the pain or doubt in George and Jenny's hearts. They spent the rest of their lives searching for answers, posting billboards with their children's faces along Highway 16 for decades. But the quiet truth, supported by the best evidence available, is that the Sodder children likely perished in the fire that night, not abducted, not hidden away, but victims of a tragedy compounded by grief, rumors, and a town desperate for answers. Sometimes, the hardest truth is the one without a villain. And sometimes, the mystery we hold on to is the only thing keeping the memory alive. So what happens when mysteries lose their mystery? When the ghosts turn out to be mistakes? And the monsters were just men? The truth is, solved cases don't erase the fear. If anything, they prove that reality is scarier than fiction. These weren't just ghost stories or viral theories. They were real people. Real lives. Real endings. And while the mystery may be over, the echo of what once haunted us still lingers. Stay curious. Stay sharp. And we'll see you in the next Shadow File. Do not forget to like and subscribe. I love you.